Alrighty, everyone. Well, it's meteorologist Timmy Albertson here again with you. Sorry, our last stream kind of cut off there, so we had to restart it here. Just minor technical difficulties, of course. But with that in mind, we are continuing to track some storms across southern Louisiana, heading back into southern Mississippi. The main thing, at least the kind of the predominant feature over the past hour or so, has been kind of this strong line that stretched all the way from around the Brookhaven, Mississippi area, going back down towards Hammond, Louisiana. Now, earlier when we started our live stream, it was a bit further back to the west. Of course, moving about 65 miles an hour. But in terms of severe weather with that, spin up tornadoes and some straight line winds have been kind of the main theme with this line. Now, that being said, the other thing that we're watching as we head our way through today is that ahead of this main line, we are going to be seeing the potential for some additional storms to fire up, and some of those, given the atmospheric setup, have been rotating and could continue to maybe rotate a little bit and produce maybe a couple of tornadoes here and there. We were watching one around just to the northeast of Covington, Mississippi, or sorry, Covington, Louisiana. And that one has since kind of lost its circulation enough that the tornado warning was allowed to expire. However, there are still a few other storms out there that we kind of are keeping an eye on. There was a nice one that was making its way towards Lake Pontchartrain. Unfortunately, it looked like it kind of ran to some it ran to some interference from a couple of showers just down to its south. And so it's kind of muddied this up a little bit. Certainly, heavy rain over the western part of Lake Pontchartrain, albeit that doesn't really affect many people because obviously it's not over land. But you get the idea. We also have this little guy here to the east of New Orleans, heading its way over towards the Bayou. The Bayou National Wildlife Refuge there. This one has had a kind of steady rotation with it through probably at least the past hour or so, but it hasn't been very strong. It's been very, very, I don't want to say not organized, but it hasn't been very strong, at least down at the surface. So that's why there hasn't been a tornado warning on that. It does appear that it's maybe kind of uptick just a little bit, but really that severe thunderstorm warning only encompasses about what 3 streets at the moment. Before it tracks maybe its way into parts of Lake Pontchartrain. But then we'll have to keep an eye out to see as this thing tracks northeast if it might get maybe a little bit to areas just to the east of Slidell. With that in mind, in terms of active tornado warnings, we don't really have any at the moment, but we do have tornado watches, and those tornado watches do extend all the way back up to Jackson, Mississippi. Right now, there are no counties in Alabama under a tornado watch, but that might try to change later on as we see some of this activity pushing its way further to the east. Basically, what's happening right now, for those of you who might not necessarily be too familiar, is we have this intensifying area of low pressure making its way out of the Beaumont, Texas area into Louisiana. And as we go through the day today, that area of low pressure will continue to intensify. And in doing so, it's going to push a cold front across parts of Louisiana. Now, that in mind is that, obviously once that front passes through, so too does the severe weather probabilities. But in the meantime, ahead of that is going to be where our severe weather probabilities are going to be highest. Again, this main line is kind of the main activity. You can see this kind of C-shaped here. Again, straight line winds with this. Earlier it was being warned for 80-mile-an-hour winds. It looks like it has since been kind of dipped back down to about 70-mile-an-hour winds. It did go over the Baton Rouge airport, but the highest wind gust that we were able to get out of the 5-minute observations is about 45 miles an hour, but that's not to say there wasn't a higher gust maybe in between both of those observations. I would say likely probably upwards about 50 or 60 mile an hour, but there are certainly some pockets here of some pretty gusty winds, again, upwards of 60, if not even 70 miles an hour. And this line, again, extends all the way from Brookhaven, Mississippi, going back down towards Hammond, Louisiana, and then ultimately to areas just to the northwest of Laplace. Now, Laplace is also interesting because we've been watching this little storm here over the past few radar scans. Doesn't look like much, but it does have a little bit of a hook with it. We'll take a look to see if it's got a little bit of rotation with it. For those of you who were watching just a little bit ago, we talked all about these different types of radars here that we're using to look at And again, even though it does have a little bit maybe of a tail here, the rotation at the moment doesn't appear to be very pronounced. But we'll see maybe if that could change. Here's that storm again, just to the northeast now of New Orleans, passing its way just to the northwest of the Bayou National Wildlife Refuge. It'll kind of head its way over open waters, kind of right along I-10, but we'll see what it does here as it maybe tries to approach the Slidell area. Otherwise, in terms of severe weather, there are no active tornado warnings at this moment in any of these counties, but that doesn't mean that that can't change a little bit. Again, we are going to be expecting the possibility here for maybe at least a few tornadoes over the next, through the remainder of the morning across parts of Mississippi and Louisiana. Here's a storm from earlier, passing just north here of the Picayune area, if I'm pronouncing that right. The town there just across the Louisiana border and Mississippi. And this little guy had a little bit of rotation with it earlier. And believe it or not, it looks like the mesocyclone is still trying to hold up just a little bit, albeit it's not in as good of a state as it was. And part of the reason for that is it's had a lot of interference as other rain showers seem to have kind of ran into it just a little bit. So what's going to be the trend as we head through the afternoon? Well, we're going to be watching as we continue to see maybe some storms trying to fire up. And again, any storms out ahead of this main line here will have the potential to not only rotate, but maybe produce a tornado or two. This activity will continue its way eastwards as we head through the morning and then eventually into Alabama and parts of the Florida Panhandle as we head into the afternoon. Now, that being said, there are no active tornado watches or anything of the sort in southern Alabama or the Florida Panhandle, but that could very well change as we go throughout the day. Storm Prediction Center right now, let's see if we can't actually go ahead here and take a little bit of a look maybe at some of these numbers here really quickly. Let me see here if I can't turn off our good friends here, the radar, for just a quick moment. Let's see here. Oh, boy. I should have figured out how to do this before we started this live stream. Well, anyways, let's see here if we can't maybe get a little bit of a look here at what is expected from the SPC. Give me a quick moment here. Don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. Give me a minute here, folks. I'll find it. So many buttons up here. That's the surface analysis. Those are buoys. We don't need the buoys. Here we go. All right, let's see here. We have the Storm Prediction Center. For those of you who might not be familiar with your the way the Storm Prediction Center works, Storm Prediction Center is out in Norman, Oklahoma. They're Norman, Oklahoma, near the Oklahoma University campus. That's where the SPC is headquartered. The Storm Prediction Center is responsible for issuing the watches, severe thunderstorm and tornado watches. They're also the ones who issue those severe weather forecasts that you see on the news. And you see, your local TV stations, they talk about, here's the enhanced risk and everything. They're the ones who do that. Now, of course, when I was a kid, there was only 4 levels, really. Instead, there was general thunderstorm and then see text, SEE space text, like see the text. And then there was slight, moderate, and high. Those were the categories of severe weather. Typically, growing up as a kid, slight risk meant things were going to get pretty interesting. Moderate risk, I believe, if I remember correctly, the Moore, Oklahoma tornado of 2013 happened in a moderate risk. That or it was the El Reno one. And then the high risks were a little bit different. The high risks, obviously, the super outbreak of 2011 was a high risk day. But derechos can also get a high risk. It's a little bit weird how it works sometimes. In terms of moderate and high risks, and there's a lot that you could decipher in the criteria that's needed for both of those. But typically, once ever since the switch over in 2015, I think it was, when they introduced the enhanced and the marginal replaced C text, and the enhanced was used to kind of serve as a bridge between slight and moderate. I don't really know if we needed a bridge for that, but we'll go into that discussion. But regardless, you get the idea. Fun fact: typically, if a severe thunderstorm watch is issued, the severe weather probability risk will get bumped up to slight. And if I remember correctly, I think for tornado watch it's enhanced. It is kind of the minimum. But again, I think that varies at times. Regardless of the fact, here's where we're expecting our wow, that was a heck of a tangent, wasn't it? Here's where we're expecting the highest of the severe weather to be for the day today. Again, moderate risk, and that's going to be Baton Rouge, Haiti, Meridian, Epilosa, and Shenandoah. And so basically, we're looking kind of at the southern part here of Louisiana and the southern part of Mississippi. Now, tornado probability certainly going to be a little bit higher than usual. But the main thing is actually going to be the wind. And that might seem a bit, strange, but if we were to kind of zoom out here a little bit, and I'll see here if we can't uh, flip our radar here really quickly and see if we can't get it so that we can, that's a 3D option. Well, that's pretty cool. So our main severe weather risk here today is mainly going to be right around this area where we're kind of already seeing that activity, but it also spills over into part of Alabama. Again, that's going to be maybe as we go into the late morning and into the early afternoon. We'll have to see how that kind of holds out. And then we could be seeing it maybe spilling into the Florida Panhandle also later on. But right now, kind of the main area that's being watched is now going towards Pascagoula. Okay, so that's a town. For those of you who are Ray Stevens fans, have you ever listened to Ray Stevens? He had a song, Mississippi's Squirrel Revival song. And the setting is it takes place in the sleepy little town of Pascagoula. I have never been able to say that town's name right. I don't know why. I know it's not that hard, but Pascagoula, I can never just say it. And that's been a thing for at least 20 years. Or I cannot say the town of Pascagoula. Anyways, Gulfport, I can pronounce that one. That one's not too difficult. And Biloxi, that's not too hard to differentiate either. For some other reason, Pascagoula is just one of those towns where I just cannot pronunciate correctly. Let's take a look here. As far as Georgia is concerned, someone did ask here, what does Georgia need to know about this weather for the day today? Well, the main thing about Georgia and places further to the east is that this activity, at least for today, is mainly going to be happening off to the west. Now, some of that could maybe, we'll have to see how things play out in the afternoon. If there is going to be a severe weather probability in Georgia, at least right now, the way things are looking is that it would kind of be on the southwestern section, I would say south of Columbus. So right now, like Atlanta doesn't appear, then it would kind of be in the main, the main thing. And again, that's pending that this holds up. As we go into the evening, this might turn into kind of continue to be more or less of an MCS event. So for right now, I would say Georgia is certainly not going to be seeing the highest risks of this at all. And this is all going to be staying mainly to the south or mainly to the west of Georgia. There could still maybe be a few stronger storms later on, depending upon how this stuff holds out as we go into the late afternoon and evening hours. But I think as far as major severe weather around Georgia, probably not quite as much. Hopefully that maybe answers your question there. Now, with that in mind, though, we'll have to see how things play out. But overall, the main activity at this time, and don't worry, we'll come back to Georgia in a little bit here. But the main area that we're watching, though, is this part here. We're now just to the east of Baton Rouge and going over towards the Hammond area. We're looking north of New Orleans. And the kind of the main thing we've been watching is this line of storms right here. Now, earlier it was looking pretty decent, but it appears, though, as if this line is maybe kind of weakened just a little bit, but it's still moving pretty decent. Winds about 60 miles an hour, so kind of borderline severe thunderstorm warning criteria there. With that in mind, though, that's not to say that it still can't have any pockets. In fact, when this thing went through Baton Rouge, we did get a few reports of, some trees down. And again, this was about, an hour or so ago, and this line made its way through Baton Rouge. But it does appear, like I said, that the storm line itself has kind of tapered down just a little bit. And we're going by a little bit. Well, we're not necessarily seeing those winds quite as strong as what we were seeing earlier. Now, here's where things could get interesting, though, is as we begin to see, temperatures kind of rising just a little bit, conditions may be getting a little bit more favorable. It'll be interesting to watch here to see if we're able to get some additional storms, and we are expecting this, some additional storms to fire up ahead of this main line here, some of which could rotate. So obviously we have this main guy back here, and behind it just kind of more or less a steady rain. We were talking about rainfall rates earlier, actually, In the previous stream that we did, they're now over an inch of rain over in Baton Rouge. At least over the past like hour or so, they've gotten over an inch of rain now. So certainly some very heavy rains out across this area. This area has generally been seeing some pretty heavy rain activity over the past couple of days. So what about as we continue our way through the day today? What are we going to be seeing with these storms? Well, as was asked earlier, what about Georgia? Well, like I said, by the time we get towards the evening hours, or at least by the late afternoon, if this activity is still holding up, probably not going to be seeing it quite as strong. However, showers and thunderstorms will certainly be a possibility, even going all the way up into Tennessee and other parts of the Ohio River Valley. But as far as the severe weather concern is, for those of you who are wondering about that, today it's mainly going to be down around the Gulf Coast area of the Deep South. Now, we will have to wait and see here, though, how this activity behaves over the course of the next few hours. But as we go into the day tomorrow, there will probably be yet another possibility for some severe weather across parts of the Deep South. That'll include southern Georgia. But for right now, that's mainly just going to be kind of a carryover from the activity that we're seeing, that we could be seeing as we go through the overnight tonight and into the day tomorrow. So I know it sounds kind of weird here, but this activity itself, we'll kind of watch it as it tracks its way throughout the day, and then maybe overnight, kind of make its way in, and then we could see it maybe hanging around into the early morning. But again, not right now, not expecting a widespread severe weather outbreak down across that area. So really for the day today, mainly just going to be down around the Gulf Coast area where the atmospheric setup is pretty favorable. But again, we'll keep an eye on things. Let's take a look here. Now, as we mentioned earlier, kind of the main thing for the day today is going to be that tornado probability. And that tornado probability really is just kind of mainly affecting this area right here from about Meridian, Mississippi, all the way over towards, we'll say maybe about Montgomery, Alabama, heading back down towards Pensacola, Florida, and then all places up until this storm line here. So this is kind of the main area that we're watching as we go through the day today. Now, with that being said, what is kind of the main concern? Well, really, it's going to be straight line winds. Believe it or not, that's kind of the higher probability for the day today is going to be those straight line winds. Now, I say that because, we've been talking a lot about the tornadoes, but the straight line wind thing here, when you have a line of storms like what we have right now, the line of storms tend to really feature, these strong gusty winds, and we have certainly been seeing quite a bit of that here. Now, mind you, it does look like it has tapered down a little bit. In fact, it just passed right over the Weather Office radar here down around Hammond. It doesn't look like those winds have been overly strong. But keep in mind here that we get these little pockets, and you can kind of see it here on this velocity imagery. These little pockets here, Folsom heading all the way down over towards just northwest there of Madisonville, where we could be seeing maybe some enhanced wind gusts, maybe 60, 65 miles an hour, possibly upwards of 70 miles an hour. We do know earlier on this morning this line was possibly producing winds upwards of about 80 miles an hour. So certainly, it has a history of producing gusty winds, but maybe not quite as much as it was doing earlier. Moving rapidly along. As far as trail threat is concerned, anything that manages to fire up ahead of this main line could have the possibility for producing a couple of tornadoes. Now, if we look over Lake Pontchartrain right now, we do actually have kind of a decent signature that there is at least some rotation. And we were talking about this storm not that long ago when it first made its way over Lake Pontchartrain. It looked like it was getting pretty decent. Then it ran into some activity as it made its way over Lake Pontchartrain. But right now, it seems like it's kind of reorganized itself a little bit. And we can kind of see this little bit of a notch right here. And obviously, we are still over the water, folks. So nothing over at the moment. However, this is the velocity imagery here, right here on the right, this red and green thing that you see that looks like a Christmas decoration gone awry. But it's not. It's not a Christmas decoration that's gone awry. Or it could be, depending upon your version of Christmas decorations. But this thing is basically detecting winds in one of two directions, either towards or away from the radar. Seems pretty simple. And it has served us pretty well in meteorology if we're looking at straight line winds, but also if we're looking at tornadoes. So reds are winds going away from the radar site, which is all the way over in Hammond, and greens are winds going towards the radar site. All right, when we see high values of those, right up against each other, is a good, we call that a couplet in meteorology, is a good indication that there's, pretty decent rotation. We would want higher values of both of those to be right up on each other in kind of a, small-ish type of area. This looks like it is trying to rotate here a little bit, It certainly has some of the characteristics of it here, but again, maybe not at the surface at the moment. But what will be interesting, though, is to see what this storm does as it makes its way back on land here. And right now, it's looking like it'll probably cross somewhere. Let's see here, we'll just loop it to double check here, but it's looking like it'll mainly stay to the north here of the Sidel area. So here's our little notch here that we're kind of keeping an eye on. There it is. We'll see how this thing tracks. Could be around the Lacombe area here, maybe in about the 20 minutes or so. So we'll see what this guy decides it wants to shape up and do ultimately. As far as our rotation from that storm that was making its way out of Louisiana, or certainly not out of Louisiana, out of the New Orleans area, it does appear that its rotation has kind of fallen apart a little bit as it's interacted with that other storm over Lake Pontchartrain. So we'll kind of keep an eye on this guy here. We'll see what it does, but right now it's mainly over the open waters. Other areas that we were watching earlier on was an area just to the north here of the Picayune area. If I know I'm mispronouncing that right, probably. Anyways, Tacoma, that rotation it was looking pretty decent about 45 minutes or so ago. It's kind of weakened off, but ironically, well, not ironically, but interestingly, it's still holding out at least very weakly. We'll see if this thing maybe tries to reorganize itself, but again, it just keeps getting run. It just keeps getting interference from all this rain down here. And as we talked about before, the deep south, there's so much moisture, in the air and everything that goodness golly gracious, we get these storms that fire up and they just start running into each other. And as I mentioned during the previous live stream that we did, as strong as tornadoes are, they're incredibly fragile. Little things like interference from another thunderstorm coming in and hurting the inflow or whatnot. I mean, that is enough that to ruin potentially good tornadic setup. So that's just kind of your little thing here. So typically, when we talk about supercell thunderstorms, they are what is known as a term that I have mixed feelings. Actually, I have not good feelings about, but they call them discrete. Discrete. I don't know how a thunderstorm can be discrete, but whatever. That being said, by that it means kind of by itself a little bit. There's not necessarily anything right up on it. Those tend to be where you get your really good, supercell type of thunderstorms, ones that are kind of a little bit by themselves. If you were watching around Austin, Texas last night, I was certainly watching it on the radar pretty much most of the evening while watching some baseball games. Those supercells were kind of by themselves. Yes, there was a group of them, but they were independent of each other. And while they didn't produce tornadoes, supercells don't always produce tornadoes. But they all have a mesocyclone. That's rotation within the storm. And again, it was very defined yesterday on a couple of, especially one of those storms just north of Austin, through a good portion of the evening hours. But what you need is that rotation to get mixed down right to the surface. Anyways, it really helps when these storms are by themselves. In terms of a line of storms, things change a little bit. When we're dealing with a line of thunderstorms, it's typically very difficult to get, a good, solid mesocyclone to go. There's a lot of reasons for that. But what we do see with lines, and again, for those of you who like derechos are known for producing what is known as spin-up tornadoes. What is a spin-up tornado? It's a very quick tornado. And depending upon the environment that these lines are in, typically these ones that we have developed on a line tend to be EF2 or less. Not to say that the situation can't warrant sometimes maybe a slightly stronger tornado, but they also tend to be kind of short-lived. Now, sometimes you can get a good supercell kind of quasi on a line, but that opens up a whole new chapter we won't get into. So, as far as the tornado concern is today, the reason why the probability is higher out ahead of that line is simply for that reason. Lines tend to not be good at producing long track tornadoes in the type that you would want from a supercell. They tend to produce numerous little spin-up tornadoes sometimes. And again, growing up in the Midwest myself, that was not unusual. In fact, I do remember a couple of times we've had straight line storms come through. And the straight line winds of the thunderstorm were actually more than the spin up tornado it produced. Now, mind you, it's very difficult to survey the damage from a spin up tornado in a very strong storm line like a derecho or something where there's just damage everywhere. But we have signs that we look for and everything like that when it does come to doing that. But there have been times where I have surveyed tornado damage also in the midst of straight line wind damage, and it can be very difficult with some of the weaker ones to tell what was straight line and what was the tornado, if there was a tornado. We call them spin-ups too because sometimes they happen in between radar scans. But again, those are on the lines here, and we tend to see these little notches, and a lot of times we like to see them on this section here of the line. But again, we can kind of get them anywhere. There was a pretty decent notch earlier, about probably an hour and a half or so ago, further back off here towards the west when this line was moving through. But again, at the time, the line was a bit stronger. Fun fact for you: take a look at this line here on this loop. Notice how, see how it kind of, take a look at this. Now, I was talking about this earlier, and for those of you wondering where I'm going with this, you'll hear me out here. All right, take a look at this line. See how it looked like the intensity dropped off for like 2 radar scans? It went, and now it's back up to kind of that bright, vibrant red. See it right there? All right. It was the storm line was crossing over the radar site at that time. The rain's so heavy with this that it kind of obscured some of the radar's ability to detect storms. And as I mentioned in the previous stream, that when we do tend to see a heavy line of storms like this moving over the radar site, it can give, for like a scan or two, it can give a brief impression that things are weakening, just because the radar beam's having a hard time looking through all that rain right nearby it. Just kind of a fun little fact there for you. But anyways, so there you go. Let's take a look here. Obviously, we're looking a little bit further downstream now here, and I will say it does look like this line is starting to catch up with this activity around the Covington area, heading back up towards Poplarville. So we'll see here, though, if we're able to get some additional storm development, maybe across the Laurel, Mississippi area. Again, that tornado watch does actually extend all the way up to Columbus, Mississippi. It's kind of, this sideways rectangle. It's a rectangle, but it's tilted sideways, I guess, if you want to call it that way here. And again, this watch is in effect until 1 p.m. That's not to say that we couldn't maybe see that watch extended over here into parts of Alabama. That, too, will certainly be a possibility. We have additional storms that are making their way off the Gulf Coast, and we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on these guys and how they shape up. Obviously, like I said, you want these supercell storms to be away from that line and kind of somewhat by themselves, where their inflow isn't interrupted, the downdrafts aren't interrupted, things just kind of it's able to maintain itself here. But with this line catching up, it begs the question now here with any of these little guys. We'll see here. I'm curious. We still have this little notch here over Lake Pontchartrain, but it looks like the main line, you can see it there, is starting to kind of catch up a little bit here. So we'll see here what ends up happening with this little notch here. Again, right now it's right over Lake Pontchartrain, but if it's able to hold itself together, it could be coming up somewhere right around Lacombe, the Slidell area here. A little tricky to tell because obviously you see this bright band right here. That's the straight line winds from the main line of storms. So we got this little notch here, and these two guys are only separated by, let's see here. Let me take a look here. They're only separated by about 12 miles at this point. And that line of storms is moving about 65 miles an hour. So we'll see exactly how that shapes up. But I do think that there might be a little bit of a race of time, which now leads the question, are we going to start seeing our more favorable environments going to be over around this area here in Mississippi, further away from where that main line of storms is? Again, kind of a fluid situation as the atmosphere typically tends to be in terms of this weather. So again, that straight line wind risk, though, does carry all the way over into parts of southwestern Alabama, including Mobile. As we go through the late morning and into the early afternoon, we'll see how that kind of shapes out. In terms of hail, let's talk about the hail here. Now, we talked about yesterday, I know, for those of you keeping track in Texas, they had quite the hail event around the Austin metro yesterday evening. I saw a couple reports about 2.7 diameter inch hail. That's pretty decent. That'll dent up your car pretty well. As far as this particular event is concerned, maybe a little bit of a possibility for some hail, but not necessarily expecting too much of it. All right, so we're probably not going to be seeing that large hail like what we saw yesterday. Not to say that we can't see some hail, but it's looking to not be quite as much of a factor as it was yesterday. Now, yesterday there was also a little bit less of a Trino factor, if that makes any sense. Even though that they were supercells, they certainly did have rotation with them. So let's take a look here again. Overall, our general severe weather risk for the day today, it's going to be, might be a little bit hard for you to see on your screen, but we'll take a little bit of a look. It's going to be this area here, south of Demopolis, all the way over towards west of Greenville, Alabama, heading back down towards Mobile, Gulfport, north of New Orleans, back to Baton Rouge, all the way up to Jackson, and then over towards Meridian, Mississippi. So kind of the area that we're seeing this activity right now. Again, the main reason for that moderate risk is more or less the straight line winds, but there is still that probability for a couple of tornadoes. And even though places like southern Alabama are not under necessarily that moderate risk, it does not mean that we can't still see the probability for maybe a couple of tornadoes as we go later on in the day. Obviously, this main line of storms here, kind of the main player. Try to watch, like I said, it is in effect until 1 o'clock this afternoon. That includes Columbus, Mississippi, going all the way over towards Meridian, but it does not include any places in Alabama at this time. We'll see that maybe later on if that decides it wants to change based on how things are going. And while I can't show you the weather map right now, I can tell you that again, low pressure intensifying, making its way out of Beaumont, heading towards the Lake Charles area. Will it continue to track northeast and continue to intensify throughout the day? That cold front pushing through this line of storms, obviously, kind of preceding that cold front there. So again, if you want tornadic activity, you want it to be ahead of that main line there of storms. But again, we'll keep an eye here to see if we can maybe get any little spin ups along this line. There might have been one earlier. Before we started doing a live chat here that I was taking a look at. Anyways, let's kind of want to go back to our guy, though, down around here, Lake Pontchartrain. Got another little notch. In fact, this notch here around Sedell might be that same notch that we had, the one that was just east of New Orleans, for those of you watching on the last stream. Yeah, take a look at that. Oh, that's pretty cool. So we were watching this notch of rotation that was pretty defined. It passed just southeast of New Orleans. There was never Trino warning on it. It didn't look like it was, going to produce it. But it had rotation, as again, sometimes these, stronger supercellular type of thunderstorms have. They have to. They have rotation within them. It's when that rotation becomes strong enough to get right down to the surface. But typically with these supercell thunderstorms, we have rotation in them by definition. So we were watching an area of rotation just southeast of New Orleans. It passed its way over the Bayou Wildlife Refuge. And that's take a look at it there as it makes its way on land. We kind of lost it a little bit, but I'm wondering here, because it went over Lake Pontchartrain, and there is less friction over the open waters than there is over land. So I'm wondering if friction might have actually also played a little bit of a role in maybe this mesocyclone starting to look better. This is separate from the one that we were watching down here. So we got two areas of rotation possibly right up on each other. One of them being right here. Now, this one down here was the one that we were watching back when it was getting ready to cross Lake Pontchartrain. You can kind of see it there a little bit. I mentioned it earlier, but then there was some interference, and now it's looking like this is kind of a regeneration of it out ahead here of that main line. And again, this bright red that you see coming in there, that's the main line. So we're looking at these two areas right here. So anyways, we got this guy over Slidell at the moment here. And like I said, this looks like it does have a little bit of rotation. Here's our winds going away from the radar. Here's our winds going towards the radar. Certainly got some decent values. Now, this thing is, like I said, right up over Slidell, heading up towards Pearl River. That's the second time now we've had to talk about something near Pearl River. Radar imagery does show what looks to be maybe a little bit here of a hook. We'll see how this thing shapes up over the next scan or two, but that could certainly be interesting to watch. And then we have this kind of broader circulation right here that's about ready to exit Lake Pontchartrain too. They're going to be right around the Lacombe area, probably a little bit further west of Slidell, but certainly it could be interesting to see what this guy here is going to do. Now, like I said, I find it interesting how as soon as this thing gets off of the water, circulation kind of picks back up a little bit. And so I'm thinking friction may have a little bit to play in that with the overall parent mesocyclone. But all things considered, they're pretty cool. So we got this little notch here. We'll see if this ends up getting warned, and then we have this little notch right here that's still over Lake Pontchartrain. Now, right now, Lake Pontchartrain does have that special marine statement that is in effect, and it's going to be for gusts of about 50 knots. Certainly going to be a little bit choppy up there here for still across the far eastern part of Lake Pontchartrain for any of you fish that might be happening to watch. It'll get a little bit churny. All right. Let's see on our main line. We're still not seeing any, any defined notches on our main line here, but we'll keep an eye on that. And again, this is our guy right here near Slide Out. I want to see what this looks like on the more local radar here. I think we're going to be too far away from it, so never mind. We'll give it a shot. Let's take a look. Let's see what this thing looks like on the velocity. And again, oh yeah, that's not helpful. All right, so we gotta go back to our main radar, the one in Hammond. So again, here we go, Slide L. A little bit of a notch there. And take a look at this. This one started to notch out pretty good too. So there may be something here, and this is going to be coming right up on land too. Right now, it appears as though it'll stay just west, or maybe just. Oh man, this might be going right. Certainly going to be going past and probably just east of Lacombe. Question is how close to Slide Out is it going to get? Regardless, we have that initial rotation all the way up from all around the Pearl River area. Again, this is on the northern edge of Slide Out here. I know, a little disorganized in how I introduced that to you. Again, we have two areas of rotation that we're kind of watching. Both of these areas of rotation we were actually looking at in the previous screen. They were further away from each other. But now they're kind of getting closer to each other just, by default. The one that you see there north of Slidell, this little pocket right here, and there's that trigger warning. The one that you see here just north of Slidell, I believe this is the first time now, at least this morning, or since this mesocyclone's been around. This is the first trigger warning it's earned. I find that pretty interesting. Again, it passed just southeast of New Orleans, but it wasn't looking quite as strong at the time. Nonetheless, this is it now. This trend warning includes Pearl River. It includes the northern edge of Slidell here, but keep in mind that next radar scan or two, this thing's going to be away from Slidell. So now really it's going to be Pearl River. This trigger warning is radar indicated. Again, nothing's been observed at this time, but that's not to say that it, can't do anything maybe here in just a little bit. We have a little bit of a notch right here that we're looking at, and again, this rotation is actually held up when it was over Lake Pontchartrain, but it did kind of appear to weaken a little bit. And now, got back on land, and it appears that it has kind of re-intensified just a little bit there. So, like I said, kind of interesting. I'm wondering how much topography kind of played a little bit of a role in that thing. We also have this notch right here. Now, this thing is not over land at the moment. It's getting close. No warning on it yet. We'll see what it tries doing, but certainly keeping an eye on this thing. Now, as I mentioned before in previous things, we have another tool that we use for trying to take a look at tornadoes, and that's known as the correlation coefficient. I know I explained it earlier, but just in case for anybody watching now who isn't familiar with it, what is the correlation coefficient? Simple. The correlation coefficient, basically the radar is measuring the size of objects in the air. If we have a regular old rainstorm, raindrops tend to be the same size. So for those of you who like statistics, the correlation, is the similarity or the relation between a bunch of different things. So if we have a bunch of objects that are the same size, they have a high correlation in terms of that regard. However, let's say we have a tornado. Well, it's not only raindrops, but now there's debris. There's leaves, there's roofs, parts of trees, dirt, all that kind of stuff. And those are all different sized objects. And so the correlation is not as high so there's a drop off. And on the correlation coefficient, that's what we look for, is that drop off. And we tend to, it tends to be circular in shape, and that's good enough, believe it or not. It's called a Treno debris signature, and that's actually good enough to get a Treno warning elevated from radar indicated to observed, or at least confirmed. Right now, it doesn't look like we have one at the moment, as this thing comes up on Pearl River. I do know that sometimes these scans tend to lag just a little bit here, but that doesn't appear that there's. Oh man, this thing is starting to look pretty, pretty decent here. It's not the best organized, but my guess is if you're there and you're seeing it through the rain, you probably got a nice little. You certainly have a nice little lowering there. Might be, like I said, it's probably going to be a bit tricky to see though, given the fact that it's going to probably be obscured by all the rain. Let's see here. This is still going to be radar indicated. We'll see here though what it does. Like I said, it is starting to look decent. It was always looking decent. And like I said, if we were to loop this thing, you would see that this circulation has been ongoing all the way since south of New Orleans. Back when it was around. I'm trying to think of where exactly we started picking this thing up. It was north of Grand Isle, I think, here. But that rotation, it was interesting. Like I said, it was looking, it had a pretty solid rotation, but it never looked like it got it all the way down to the surface. But now it kind of looks like it has at least a little bit. So if we have a trend, it's probably going to be right here, coming right up on Pearl River. Obviously, Pearl River being a town will give us a pretty good indication if there's actually a trend on the ground. Now, keep in mind, folks, that as I mentioned before, trails can be short-lived. They can also be long track. I mean, there's some trails that literally just touch down and go right back up. There's some that touch down and buy a timeshare because they're on the ground for so long. You know, so no telling exactly as to whether or not it doesn't. Kind of what we see here, though, doesn't appear to be anything on the ground, at least immediately. However, the rotation is getting itself pretty organized. And I do want to pick up here, so I got another radar that I'm looking at too here. Let's see here. Take a look at my correlation coefficients here. See if we got a drop off of any kind here, and there may be one. Let me double check something here. Difficult to tell. It's right on the edge. So anyways, yes, so this is the area of rotation that we're watching right about here. Right here, yeah, radar indicated rotation at the moment. All right, so again, still being radar indicated. I'm also curious, like I said, this notch not looking quite. Now it really looks like it's kind of falling apart there. That notch as it's made its way on the land. We'll see though with this. We'll see that maybe that can't reorganize itself. Right here. Taking a look at this. Sorry, I was thinking at the CCs here. Again, this thing's pretty much right over Pearl River at this time. The suspected rotation here. Let's take a look. Wow, that just flew apart. We got one, and may have maybe another area of circulation trying to redevelop here. But this would have been right around where our old one was here. Let me go ahead and I just want to loop this a couple of frames here. I just want to take a double look at this. Let's see here. What in the world? There we go. So it looks like it may have fallen apart just a little bit as it's made its way over Pearl River. We'll keep an eye on it though. Because like I said, this circulation has naturally been kind of going for a while. However, my concern is though is if we have this main line now starting to approach it, and that could really begin to interfere with this with the circulation here. Let's take a look at the exact warning here. Again, it's moving north about 25-ish miles an hour. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and just kind of put a general time track on this guy. Stop the radar here so we can actually do that. So here it is right now, pretty much over Pearl River, and we're going to take it right with the Trento warning. And what we're going to do is we're going to time it out for about 30 miles an hour, even though it's about 25. But that's going to put it in Pickle in here about 20, 25 minutes, probably closer to about 20 minutes. Richardson about 25, 30 minutes. Let's see here. Hawthorne about 40 minutes if it holds up. And McNeil about 45 minutes. Again, pending it holds up here. Now, again, obviously with this main line coming through, we'll have to kind of wait and see. But that's like I said, where it's tracking to. So again, kind of last radar scan has it over Pearl River. Like I said, it's going to be putting in Pickering here to probably about 20, 25 minutes. If this thing holds up. There it is right there. There's our rotation. Again, it looks like like I said, looks like a new area trying to develop maybe behind it here. This has just kind of turned into a little bit here of a somewhat of a kind of a mess. You've seen worse. But yeah, a little bit of a cluttered radar imagery here for sure. Absolutely. Very fascinating. Certainly look like we're still getting those straight line winds here. Again, we got some higher values of it, looking maybe about 65-mile-an-hour winds, possibly within this section here of the storm. And again, this one storm line is actually moving much quicker. It's moving about 60, 65 miles an hour. And typically those strong wind ones do tend to move pretty quickly, which actually helps to enhance the wind speeds with them. Moving a little further up towards the north, let's take a look here at Jackson. Again, part of the Jackson Metro under that same trend of watch. But for them right now, it's mainly just kind of this steady rain that goes all the way from Forest down to Decatur, south of Meridian here. And this could actually maybe, we'll see here. Uh, Under normal circumstances, this might inhibit, tornadic activity. But, given some of this activity down here and how it's been not necessarily overly affecting the environment too much. I mean, it is, but you know, we'll see if this area still has time. But for the main thing though, this area south of Jackson, pretty much right along south, running parallel to I-20, mainly it's just going to be this kind of straight line situation. Again, some winds maybe around 60 miles an hour or so. We'll see maybe if that thing decides it wants to uptick a little bit more, like it was earlier on this morning. But here's our tornado warning at this time. Again, now just kind of north here of Pearl River, we also got a few other little notches that we're taking a look at. And so we got this main notch followed by this notch, and then there's another notch and another notch. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 little notches here. Another one right over Slidell. This is the one that's now making its way. Yeah, this is the one that we're watching over Lake Pontchartrain. It looks like it has tracked pretty much right into Slidell. So certainly a little bit of rotation with that guy too. It doesn't look like we have a debris signature or anything of the sort at the moment. But again, it could be a little spin up kind of embedded right in here. We'll see what this guy decides it wants to do. But overall, we got our main tornado warning, and that's for this section here, just north of Pearl River now, tracking to the northeast here about 25 miles an hour. So again, probably another 20 minutes before we see it moving to the Picayune area. I'm pronouncing that town right again. I'm sure I'm not, but we'll see here if that circulation manages to hold up as this line kind of makes its way through. Kind of have to see here. Otherwise, there we go. So we got our Pearl River area. This main thing here. Let's take a look. I want to loop this here so you can kind of see what we mean. There it is. This is our main circulation. Really got kind of pushed here by that incoming line of storms. But now we have, again, a couple little notches. And this one around Slidell is kind of interesting to take a peek at. I would imagine here, we'll see what this thing does over the next scan or two. Earlier, before I did the live stream, there was one town, and I can't, oh man, I can't remember. There was three active tornado warnings on this one town. Three separate tornado warnings that all happened to kind of overlap. I just thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah, I've seen weird things like that before. But this, just in the way that the warnings were laid out for the individual storms, there was one town that was under three of them. This was way earlier on this morning, though, before we started doing the live stream, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. All right. So we'll see here, but so here's our main circulation here, and again, it's kind of drifting up now away, but like I said, we got a couple of these little notches down here that are pretty interesting to kind of keep a little bit of an eye on. Let's take a look here. What else do we got going on further up towards the north? Not much at this moment. Oh, we do have a brand new tornado watch here that is in effect, and this is going to include southern Alabama. Let me pull up the specifics about this particular tornado watch here. Again, this tornado watch is going to include the Florida Panhandle, and it is going to include Alabama here. This is going to be for the potential for, let's see, a few tornadoes, and they're still thinking the storm line might have still some power in it to maybe continue to intensify here. Now, I will say, as we go later in the morning now here, the atmosphere is going to kind of continue to destabilize. I don't have the current conditions up. Normally, I have those laid out here for you guys. I'm going to pause it here really quickly, and we're going to go back to just our one scan here. It looks like this is going to come right up on picking in here. It's pretty much going parallel 559. And then we have this area down around Slidell. What we're going to do here for a quick minute is we're going to zoom out just a little bit here, and we're going to take a look at our good friends here that are trying to watch. Take a little bit of a look at it here. In fact, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give me a quick second here. All right, so let's take a look here at our brand new trying to watch that is in effect. And this guy is going to be in effect until 5 o'clock this afternoon. So, like I said, normally we don't. Normally we would expect severe weather to be happening during the afternoon. In this case, late morning and into the afternoon. So here we go. Here's our brand new trying to watch. Again, it's kind of small, relatively speaking. It only includes the southwestern portion of Alabama. It does not include Montgomery, but it does include Selma. It does include Demopolis, but it does not include Greensboro here. Monroeville, Jackson, also under that new trend to watch. Mobile, Alabama, Fairhope, Gulf Shores, Pensacola, Florida is also under that watch there. This goes until 5 p.m. So here's the expectation. All this activity we got going on over here is going to track its way towards the east now. Let's take a look here at some of the conditions. Let me see if I can pull them up here. We'll take a look at some current conditions here. We'll use our good friends here, the Mobile radar. And so basically we got temperatures right now there in the lower 70s across much of southwestern Alabama. Dew points likely going to start to really rise, especially if we start getting that front to lift up a little bit here. Let me double check at the latest surface map and see how we're doing with our frontal boundary. Soon as I can get that up here, just a quick moment. Pull up the good old surface analysis, and we're going to take a little bit of a look here how the WPC has things laid out. So our area of low pressure, again, probably tracking its way into. Let me double check here. Sorry, just got some new charts. So our main area of low pressure again is fixing its way now into far western Louisiana. It appears to be that warm front that stationary front is maybe now trying to lift just a little bit here. Let's take a look here. How are we doing out ahead? Now, I know you guys aren't able to see much of what I'm looking at here on my end. But here we go. It's starting to destabilize here. And let me double check here one other little thing before we continue on. Yeah, there's okay. Yeah, so we could be seeing there's potential that we could be seeing maybe this it looks to be. We got brand new tornado warning. And this is going to be for the Gulf Coast. This is going to be for the second area of rotation. So here we go. We got 2 tornado warnings that are now in effect. We went from having none to now we have 2. Let's take a look here really quickly. I'm going to show you it here. So we got this area that's being watched right here. This little notch right here near Slidell, radar indicated. And then we have the second one coming up on Picayune. Now, that being said, though, folks, is that both of these are radar indicated. This storm is kind of tracking a bit. It's pretty much might be running almost parallel with I-10 here. If we want to go straight off the radar. So it's funny. They got 2 tornado warnings. Both of the circulations appear to be running parallel to an interstate. It's kind of interesting. Normally doesn't work out that way. But there we go. So we'll kind of keep a little bit of an eye on these guys here. Main storm line, again, pushing its way in here. Now, as mentioned, the interest is now going to be in this region right here. And we say that because this is further out ahead of that storm line, okay? We're looking at a little bit further out ahead of that storm line. So any storm that does fire up here in this area is going to have the benefit of not having a fast-moving storm line right on its tail, literally. Uh, and yeah, we'll have that ability. I do think here, if we take a look at this guy, let me see here. This one could be interesting to watch. Of course, it just came off the water, and we're going to be looking for here. Now, remember, as I said, we're going to want these guys to be a little bit isolated from each other. That's what we're going to be wanting in the grand scheme of things. I think things here could be getting pretty interesting here, pretty soon. Well, at least maybe a little bit more interesting. You know, well, you get what I'm saying. I, I mean, it's always interesting. Uh, but yeah, so we got our main line of storms here. So we're gonna have to kind of switch back and forth between Biloxi radar and the old Hammond, Louisiana radar. With that in mind here, let's take a look here. How is our rotation doing as it comes its way up on Piculin here? And it's still kind of holding out there. And then we have this little surge right here. And we still have that notch pretty much right over Slidell here. I'm going to turn my camera off here for just a quick moment. But you are still able to see me here. So we're taking a look at this guy right here down around Slidell. A little notch there. We'll see what that ends up. It's interesting how long the watch is, though. But then again, I think based on what we've been seeing with some of these not, or we've been seeing these notches really kind of pop up. Oh, that's a bad radar scan there on the right. Who? Oh, faulty scan there. There's some interference in how it was processing, I bet you. Otherwise, we have, let's see here. Yeah, what's the term? There is a term for this, and I cannot remember now. Overlap or whatnot. Sometimes it happens because the way the scale works, it's really kind of it's interesting. It's a problem that you think that they would have, I don't know, figured out by now. But anyways, there's that. So what we're doing here really quickly is we're just kind of taking a look here at our velocities. I'm taking a look here at my correlations just to see if we have anything other at the moment. But really, it's just kind of more or less a. Well, there may be. Let me see here. Give me a quick second. Drop off right here. Question is though, is that already there? Yeah, a little difficult to tell at the moment here. If that might actually be a signal or if that's just the gust front picking up some stuff here. We'll get another scan, but so what we're looking at is this right here, but it doesn't seem to line up with where the velocity was right over Pearl River State Wildlife Management Area. Actually, yeah, it's just past it, coming up on the John C. Stennis area here, if that is something on the ground, but it looks like at the moment it is not. So we'll just wait here for the next scan and see what becomes of that. Overall, though, this has certainly been a very interesting. This has certainly been a very interesting section of the storm to watch here, because, like I said, the parent circulation that prompted the first warning is now being effectively ran into. We can see it up here. So this is the one that prompted our first trend warning down near north of Sidell around Pearl River. It was looking pretty decent. But unfortunately, for that area of rotation, the main line caught up with it pretty quickly, and it's looking like it's pretty much ran right into it. Meanwhile, we had the second kind of batch of rotation that we had actually been watching since on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain, and that also began to move along shore. Both of those, as soon as they got on shore, like I said, two separate tornado warnings for those two areas of rotation. The first one is not having a good time. As it's been getting ran into now by this main line. The new one is also kind of it is right on the line, so it's kind of more or less like a little bit of a QLCS type of situation here. And what we're looking at on these two radar scans here is whether or not these might be debris signatures or if this is just stuff caught up in the outflow. And I'm thinking here that this might just be stuff caught up in the outflow. Or the first kind of push there of the wind is moving through here. Again, we kind of see it there a little bit. Pause it here. Again, that kind of lines up with that. So it may be picking up some leaves, but it might just be more of a kind of a straight line wind type of a setup here at the moment. That's what this is appearing to be. We'll see here though. We'll give it another scan or two to see exactly what we're looking at. But all things considered, that's kind of the height of the activity at the moment. Now, again, we'll have to start watching this area back here. Again, brand new trend to watch. This goes until 5 o'clock. It does include southern Alabama, most of South, includes southwestern Alabama, including Mobile, as well as a couple counties on the Florida Panhandle, Pensacola area, all the way over to Crestview, but it does not include Santa Rosa Beach or Destin. No, yes, it does include Destin, but it does not include Santa Rosa Beach. I would say that I couldn't change here. So what we're going to be watching too, as we head through the next couple of hours, is the activity over here. And again, as we've been seeing with this case is Louisiana, is obviously there's a lot of precipitation, but when these storms have managed to get themselves kind of away from everybody else, they have managed to rotate. We got this little section right here. We'll see what that does. Followed by another little section right down in here. We'll see what that does. And then we got this guy that's just making its way onshore now. A little bit there of a pocket could be interesting to watch to see what this storm does northwest of Moss Point, excuse me. Looks like it'll be staying north of Moss Point, and same thing of Pascagoula, the town that I mentioned earlier that I could not pronounce. But it might be crossing 63 here, just north of Moss Point. Right now, it's pretty much right over 10 north of Gutiérrez. Um, we'll see here, though, how this guy's going to shape up. Because, again, that could, let's see here. This might try to do something here in just a little bit, too. We'll have to kind of wait and see at the moment. Let's take a look back here at our big old guys. Again, still radar indicated, and both of these are still radar indicated. We were taking a look earlier at what might have been, which you thought might have been a debris signature, but it's looking like now at the next scan that's not the case. It might have just, like I said, been some stuff getting picked up by the gust front of the thunderstorm there. Nonetheless, we still have our rotation, especially higher up in the thunderstorm, still somewhat defined here. The one that is now just northeast of Picayune, and the other one, which is starting to kind of looks like they might be trying to develop another one around the Florida area. A little bit of a mess at the moment with this group of storms again. That main line kind of running right into it here, but we'll see. This might try to maybe develop. We'll see if it can hold out here. Maybe it might try to reorganize itself just a little bit. And again, we also got our dude around here near Gutiérrez, pretty much right up on Highway 10. And I'm curious about this guy. I want to see if this thing manages to get itself organized. And it's actually in a kind of a decent location at the moment, where it may be able to maybe start getting something going here. So yeah, we'll give this a few more scans. But overall, yeah, active weather today down in the south. Like I said, normally when we talk about severe weather, we talk about we talk about it happening uh, normally during the late afternoon and into the evening. But the morning is not the normal time for severe weather, but it can happen. And in this case, this is a good example of when it can happen. I do think that overall, uh, the speed of the winds has gone down at least a little bit. But I do find it interesting, though, that overall, uh, I find this rather interesting. Like I said, I want to see how Let's see how this one is going to hold out. So again, here we have a Moss Point. We have a skin or two for this particular storm. Again, we are north of Pascagoula, almost heading right into Alabama. Here's the latest radar scan. We'll see here how it looks on the velocity. So it may take a little while to get organized. We'll kind of have to wait and see with that one. Meanwhile, our main trainer warning, again, is still back here. We'll turn off these surface observations for you guys as we don't need the radar too cluttered up. Let's take a look here. How are we doing with these two storms? So our rotation has gone down a little bit, but we still have some pretty gusty winds coming up here now. Let's see what I'm curious to see though what this section right here. This looks like it has some pretty decent winds with it. Maybe upwards of about might be some good 60, 65 mile an hour wind gusts in that section right here. Depending upon, yeah, that looks like a nice little surge forward there in the overall grand scheme of things. Let's take a look at this. I want to double check on this radar here, just to make sure. Taking a look here right up along the Gulf Coast. We have any other storms that are trying to rotate right now, and it looks like no stuff coming out of Thibodaux at the moment does not appear like it has anything really tornadic with it. It's mainly going to be this section here, and we'll keep an eye on this storm. We're looking way south here of Mobile, way southwest, excuse me, of Mobile. And I just want to see how this guy tries to evolve north here, Gutierrez. It's not right in this area. We'll see how this guy tracks here over the next couple of minutes. So for those of you wondering here, I'm going to take a quick little break, at least talking, get my voice here, just a quick little minute break. But then I'm not going to stop the voice. I'm not going to stop the live stream though, but I am just going to take a quick little verbal break here for just a quick moment while I check up on a couple of quick things here weather-wise, and then we will continue our discussion. So just hang tight. All right, checking a couple of things here on my end. Those of you who might be watching, don't worry. We're going to continue our discussion here in just a few moments. That's the line of storms that comes off Lake Pontchartrain. Less friction over the open waters. So atmospheric thunderstorm warning that's in effect includes the city of New Orleans, and they're having it tagged for about 80 mile an hour winds. It'll be interesting to see if that ends up being observed. But I'm guessing they're thinking here that as this thing comes right off as this comes right off Lake Pontchartrain, Yeah, could have some decent wins. This section looks like it certainly's got some decent wins here. There is an airport right up on that notch there. Let me see if this got a 5-minute observation with it. I'm curious to see if this. Yes, it does have a 5-minute observation. Oh, it's only hourly. Oh boy. Well, we'll see if they do an intermediate. Yeah, they hopefully they'll do an intermediate observation. And I am very curious. They got a little airport right here. A little hard for maybe you to see on your screen, but it does look like it's right in the path here of this. What looks to be a very decent uh, burst of winds here. The trend has not been observed, by the way. Let's take a look at here on the correlation coefficient as to where it has been observed. Let's see here. Radar confirmed tornado damaging. Let's see here. Diamond Head moving northeast. So it's going to be right up on the Diamond Head area. Brand new tornado warning, by the way. This one is also going to be observed. So it looks like the area here that we are taking a look at, it's embedded here, probably right here. So here's brand new tornado warning. It's going to be right here. This is an observed tornado. Now, I'm curious as to see, because they still have the second one tagged right here. We'll see if they let this warning go. But regardless of the fact, there certainly is some very strong winds here with this, as well as at least we have a confirmed tornado now on the ground here, and looking like we're tracking this area right here. Now, we were showing you the correlation coefficients a little bit ago, and we thought might have been possibly some stuff just caught up in the outflow of the storm. Is radar signature at the moment here a little bit difficult to see on the on the correlation coefficients though, where this thing is exactly, but it's probably going to be right up in this area. So again, they have it as observed at this moment. So we got two active tornado warnings potentially here for the same area of rotation. If we zoom out a little bit, saying it's right over Diamond Head. Or excuse me, pull up this text here again. Let's take a look here. It's northwest of Diamond Head. So it's going to be, yeah, pretty much right at the overlap here of both of these tornado warnings. This trail, let's see here. Storm. Actually, this is New Orleans has put up that tornado warning. So again, it's going to be right up around here somewhere. Right pretty much here at this notch. You can see it right there. Listen, we'll spin up tornado here. We'll see how long this thing decides it wants to carry on. As far as our other tornado warning is concerned, it's still radar indicated. I'm wondering if they're going to let it expire here, as it really looks like that the rotation has just been overtaken by this whole line. Nonetheless, though, we still have our main line right here. And again, we were tracking an area of rotation that was located right south of the John C. Stennis Space Center here on I-10. That rotation may have weakened off, or it may have just moved up to the north here, right there. And so we got a new tornado warning that's in effect, and this is pretty much right over, just north of the junction of 43 and 603. A lot of threes there for you. Apparently, at the moment, this is being tagged as an observed tornado, radar indicated observed tornado here. So we're going to watch it and see what it does here over the next few scans and whether or not it decides it wants to hold out. In fact, let's take a look here since this line is moving so quickly. We're going to flip our velocity here really quickly. See if we can't see it on the SRM here. No, it's still a bit. Yeah, the main area of rotation is going to be this one. So I'm curious if they're going to let this original tornado warning here drop off, or if they're going to keep it just in case there's another spin off. But it appears right now that the notch itself is going to be right here. So if there is tornado on the ground, it's going to be right here in this area, coming right up on 603. We'll pause the image here. There's a little potentially a signature there. We'll see what that does. So overall, yes, we got 3 active tornado warnings. This one is probably going to be allowed to expire if they don't cancel it sooner. because it looks like that. I mean, the rotation with this guy has just been completely overtaken by that line of storms. Then we were given this tornado warning down here. And this is also tagged as an observed tornado. And again, this one was located about 10 miles west. So it's the same area of rotation. There's two separate warnings. And really, it looks like it's kind of where this overlap here more so on this newer tornado warning, which is just north here. It might be a little hard for you to see, but it is this tornado warning right here. In fact, let me see here, maybe if I can't make this just a little bit more vivid here so that you're able to see it. We're gonna